Okay, where should I start with this? Patranger episode... I'm forgetting. Sorry, it's been a day since I should have done this. It's a Keichiro episode. I have made very clear that Keichiro has quickly become my least favorite character with how he doesn't think any of his actions through and is overall a reckless idiot in pretty much all the ways that keep screwing over Super Sentai, and this has been consistently seen from the 3 bad of the last 6 reds. So, yeah, this is, even when it's trying to make him seem appealing, it's really not. The episode starts with them going off up into the mountains to get something that they found in the mountains that relates to the Gangler and potentially the Lupin collection, with the show then quickly flashing back unnecessarily, which shows why structuring the episode this way is nonsense, because it just wastes time that could have been dedicated to other things. That this all started when, well, didn't so much start straight from there, but there's a bunch of kids that want to go on a field trip up into the mountains. They've received reports that there are strange things happening in the mountains, so the kids can't go. And it's like, Keichiro sees them all playing with Lupin Ranger stuff, and he says, no, police are awesome, and they're like, no, police are dumb, the Phantom Thieves are cool. And it's like, this is the exact same narrative plotting from one of the worst episodes of Ninja, where Takaharu stupidly tries to get this kid to love ninjas and discovers that for some reason the school that that little brat goes to is being affected by something from their faction enemies, and they sneak in as toys to do it, which is usually where I pull the clip when I've talked about Ninja before of him tossing up this run-out-of-control shuriken up and down like a dumbass and then sticking it to his head and a bunch of stuff that's then stupidly results from that. It's honestly one of Ninja's worst episodes, and Patranger doesn't get as bad here, but Keichiro has the exact same response as one of the worst Sentai I have ever seen. That is not a good thing when you're trying to make this character not come off as a smeghead. Really, the big problem with this show for me, from a characterization standpoint, keeps being Keichiro and how the Patrangers respond to everything. And hey, they get their comeuppance for doing that, but usually when that happens, it's not karma. It's not an enforcement of karma. It's just stupid shit happening to them just because. So it's like, okay, I keep using the parallel of Zenigata with the relationship of the Patranger to the Lupin Ranger. But the thing about Zenigata is he wasn't a fool, he wasn't treated as a fool, and that's what the Patranger keep coming off as consistently in this story. They're, like, they have stuff to them, but they consistently act foolish and less effective at, well, everything. So when you actually see competence from them, or at least good reasoning from them, it's in conflict with how they've been shown to be. Not so much Tsukasa and, to a lesser extent, Sakuya, as, you know, Sakuya is the newbie officer, and Tsukasa is the hyper-competent one that just has a guilty pleasure pastime she doesn't want to hear right about, which leads into their comedic bits. But Keichiro, not so much. Usually when they knock on him, or when he does something that's a detriment to his character, it's because he's been a freaking idiot. And this seems to be one of those situations where they have a legitimate reason for address safety concerns of the people, and yet it's, with Keichiro, it's all about, we're doing this for the children. No, you're doing it because it's your goddamn job. And they try and remedy this here by showing how Keichiro was kind of always this way about justice and helping people, by flashing back to when he was a kid and heard about this criminal that was lurking around his neighborhood, so he dressed up in gear to try and catch him himself, and it's like, so your pattern of reckless endangerment goes back to your own childhood. Like, this entire flashback scene doesn't work at all for me because, well, it's not any different from how he's ever acted. He's, acting in defiance or ignorance of all these other bigger world factors and is ignoring it all for just a black and white, they call themselves thieves, so they are criminals kind of thing that we keep getting from them. And it's like, this seems to be the origin of how he wanted to become a police officer and followed through with that, because basically a police officer saved himself from it. A police officer saved Keichiro from his own stupidity. I mean, this does not surprise me in any regard. It's just, well, you're clearly trying to show why the character should be appealing or be able to match up with the narrative story of the Lupin Ranger, but the thing is, you keep failing at that because you keep showing him as a complete smeghead. Main plot is, however, ironically, consequences. You remember one of my critiques of the early Lupin Ranger stuff is you could get a legitimate back and forth between the two factions going if the Patranger were holding them responsible for all the damage they were doing in their since their Lupin-Kaiser combination is very agile, so shots keep missing it, while the Patranger's Pato-Kaiser is built more like a tank, so it's slower, so it can take damage. Well, this is a case of consequences that should be happening to the Lupin Ranger, in contrast to their actions, is actually happening to the Patranger. In that, in a previous Monster Brawl, which, hey, to the episode's credit, this is a fantastic, and I do mean fantastic, use of narrative continuity to address all these things, because, as Tsukasa notes, the location of where they're headed for this to investigate, it's the exact location of a previous monster encounter in the mountains, specifically the one who turned its own shark jaws into teleporter gates. That happened in the early single-digit episodes. It was Tsukasa's first focus episode with, with the plushy shark. I'm forgetting which episode number it was. But she notes that, and this episode ties directly back to that, as when they were fighting that monster, a white sheep-based gangler, and its brother happened to come across one of the VS vehicles, Drill and Crane, which was in two pieces, which they were going to take as their Lupin collection pieces because they normally don't have ones. And what ended up happening is the black sheep brother of the two, well, ended up being crushed underfoot and killed outright. The white sheep boss has this wool cloud ability, so from their designs it gives off the impression that the two together would create these wool clouds, and then the black one would shock them with lightning. At least that's usually how the narrative design for those kinds of things go, but without their brother, this one is kind of useless in wanting his revenge scheme. This other monster, who has his basis on spikes and poison, wants to impress the boss. I'm forgetting his name offhand, and I left my phone in the other room, so I can't actually look most of this crap up. By collaborating with another monster to show that, in his own way, his plans will work better as a leader because he can organize and develop, organize and tactically deploy the various gangler members to execute better crimes and hits, since the spiky one's plan is to just kill off the Patranger, so they'll stop being an annoyance and defeating all the gangler members. Honestly, this seems like a good plan, as the way they draw them out is first doing stuff in the mountains so that, people will be aware and scared off, which will cause the Patranger to investigate, and two, placing something deep under the mountain which gives off this odd energy signal, which could be anything. It is, of course, the Crane VS machine, with the other T's into that being the Drill VS machine, which another man, who is actually the sheep monster in disguise, hands over to them as a lead-in to actually getting them over there. So Keichiro, thinking that he can use this drill machine to tunnel down, pretty much just takes it against everybody's recommendations because they don't know if anything has happened or been tampered with in this specific VS vehicle. And spoilers, everyone around him is completely correct. The machine has been tampered with by the Spike guy, who actually whose personal ability allows him to shrink, and has put inside of it spike launchers which stab into his back, piercing his body and poisoning him so badly that it pierces his body while he's in his transformed state and makes him power down. So this would have been deadly even if he was fully powered. And it's like, you're reaping you reap what you sow. This is completely resultant from your own bull-headed zeal actions. And I'm kind of glad he actually got it for once, but it's done in a clear way that makes it so that he is not going to learn jack all. Because they pretty much relied on burning justice for this, as Keichiro is deep underground with the drill machine and just keeps going instead of trying to back off to get medical attention while it's still at a point where he could actually recover. No, he just keeps plowing forward because it's for the children! Dude, there's no reason you can't come back. It's like, get the antidote in your system, have yourself patched up, then come back with a drill machine after you've got the spike launchers and the sabotage removed from it. It's like, you're rushing things when you have no reason to rush things, and you could just as easily die and not actually achieve your goal when this is a situation where you can have your full win condition without such damage being done to yourself. It's like, yeah, there's definitely a constant narrative about self-sacrificial heroism, but it's still stupid when you're not thinking, you know, maybe I can get patched up and I don't have to sacrifice myself, and the thing I'm after, we can still all get that win condition. It's like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills with this show. It's half good, it's half bad, and the half bad part is almost consistently the Patranger stuff. So, yeah, Crane and Drill take care of the sheep monster, but the spiky guy is also on the outs with the boss because basically he called the boss out to watch everything, and even with one Patranger down, the pair of monsters get their asses handed to them completely. Like, neither of these were strong people. The sheep guy clearly would have been only strong in tandem with his brother, so he's basically useless like this. And the spike guy, he was more of an assassin type, so he was never going to work well in open combat. So basically, the boss, I hate that I keep having to use the boss, but I keep forgetting the guy's name, basically relieves his ire in the most badass way possible, as he just touches one of his pauldrons, and it sends out this saw blade which flies around the entire battleground and devastates everything. Now, this is an old man, a very old man, who is just trying to pick a successor to go in retirement himself. He is past his prime. He is just wanting to enjoy the limelight years of his life, and he is insanely powerful. He can pretty much devastate anything in the show he wants right now with the current power tiers and scaling, and I keep having to wonder, the Patranger and Lupin Ranger are probably going to be fighting this guy at the end of the series. It's just how these things go for Super Sentai, and I'm like, what would have this guy been like in his prime, when he was at his full potential capability? Or unless he's one of those types where he grows stronger as he gets older. It's like, that happens with some types of super ancient threats. But this seems like the kind where he's tired and wanting to retire. And I'm kind of curious what he would look like in his prime, unless there's a Lupin collection piece that bestows immortality and rejuvenates him to his prime. But I doubt that's the direction Lupin Ranger versus Patranger is going to go with this guy, since the bigger focus is the feuding between the thieves and the police here. The Lupin Ranger are briefly in this episode, but the Spike guy, just to show that he had the good basis for a plan, but just couldn't follow through because he's not a normal combatant fighter, is he throws away his own Lupin collection piece to just get them out of the entire narrative. Which, hey, works in a bit, because honestly, I want the Lupin Ranger to help out the Patranger to again show that they're not bad people, so get off our backs. Apparently that's going to be a later, in the second part of this two-parter, because, yeah, it's a two-parter. The Spike monster is still around, Keichiro is poisoned and collapsed in the thing, and they gotta be rushing him to the hospital at some point. So, yeah, Lupin Ranger versus Patranger is continuing to be frustrating for the same reasons I keep citing. Build, however, it's the end of the world as we know it, and we feel fine. As Evolt has fully possessed Banjo, refused with his other self. Apparently, okay, this is funny. A couple vlogs ago, I considered the possibility, before we learned all the Banjo is Evolt's human physical form stuff, I thought Banjo was going to be acting as the guardian or last defense against Evolt using the Pandora's box, and I was kind of right on this. In this episode, they further explained that when Evolt possessed Soichiro, he tried to open the completed Pandora's box and failed because he was just an entity possessing a human body. He needed his own physical human body, meaning he needed to recombine with the cells in Banjo to actually get it to work correctly, and the Skywall incident was all a mistriggering of the box's power. So, basically, I was right in the respect that Banjo is the last seal, was the last defense against Evolt gaining its power in the regards he wanted. It's kind of a backhanded way of saying I was right, considering the show's narrative, but I'm going to take it regardless. So, yeah, that's why they needed to refuse, and now that they are refused, well, Evolt's ready for Doomsday, and he only has one full bottle left he needs. The Phoenix full bottle that is in Gentoku's hands. So naturally, the smart thing would be to hide it away while they go to confront him, even though, well, there's not exactly a lot of places left to hide them, and that hasn't exactly worked well for the rest of them thus far. But regardless, it's leading up to a big confrontation with Evolt, and his new dragon states pretty much puts him on the win condition for, well, everything. The battle goes for most of the episode with Sento considering his options, Gentoku actually joining them because, well, it's the end of the world. You kind of have to, like, join in for that kind of thing. And Kazumi trying to attract Miyasora's attention because, yeah, that's been a thing with him. There's actually a pretty hilarious bit where he's right up against Miyasora, and it's like he's right next to his idol. His idol is kind of not exactly glomping on him, but he's like, it's going through all his grease-based sound effects to represent the kind of, like, insane level his attraction has gone in all this. I found it kind of an enjoyable bit. But yeah, confrontation, and they get their asses handed to them. It's not pleasant, but it is a pretty long, protracted fight, and pretty intelligently done. Evolt can't keep unsealing the powers of the Pandora's box, if he starts losing full bottles. So their plan is, with Sento in his rabbit form, which is the most agile form they have accessible to them, he'll steal back some of the full bottles while Gentoku and Kazumi hold him off, and it does not go well because his dragon form is really damn fast, and he appears to have teleportation abilities to just high-speed everything, and I'm like, dude is kind of broken. I mean, yeah, he's on Commoner Poppy's power tier, as we kept joking before, but yeah, that still puts him to be stronger than anybody else in the series right now. And considering Evolt has had a long existence of utilizing these kinds of powers, it's like there's a massive experience gap too. Even though he hasn't had these specific powers, the general style of the power is, well, he's a destroyer of worlds. What do you expect? He's swamped in power, so of course he would have more capabilities to fight off any lesser ability, especially considering he was fighting off previous super forms while still has Blood Stark, which is a much less powerful and ability-strewn form than his current existence, especially since he's finally complete with him taking over Banjo. So, yeah, Pandora's box is opened at the end of the episode, with the tower being built and more apocalyptic tidings go around it. Hell, even the Namba Heavy Industries guys try and intervene in this because they don't want Pandora's box open yet because they think they can harness it instead of turning into a doomsday weapon. And I'm like, are you people truly idiots? He wants to destroy the planet. He goes around destroying planets. How can you think you could use this guy or say think he's actually on your side when this is his entire modus operandi from everyone who's ever researched him? It's like, there's stupidity in wanting to get profit, and then there's stupidity in encouraging the guy who you clearly know wants to end the world. Yeah. I'm kind of less interested in seeing Namba Heavy Industries as the involved in an end boss role anymore because of how just clearly dumb they've been about this. Like, I want them to eat their own hubris at this point in thinking that they could control a doomsday weapon, considering, yeah, this is clearly a mutually assured destruction point with your arms race. And Blood Stark, Evolto, is that's even several of his speeches or tirades in this one where he keeps mocking Sento in the role of science in causing all types of war, making people lazy so they forget the importance of things. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty much in Sento's camp. Just because these things are created doesn't make people use them horribly. It's up to people's own choices, and if they're not taught their meaning, which is actually the problem, they don't actually teach people correctly how to handle these things and treat these things, then of course there are going to be problems. But that's the other role science has in, if you have a problem, science is used to fix it. It is not a hammer that hits down all nails. It is a multi-tool, where there is a right tool for the right job. Fixing warfare, yeah, that's normally not science's forte, as that's just battles between people. It's almost always meant to not invoke warfare, but to stop it more times than not. Granted, we're humans, and we have that little instinct in the back of our minds to fight for what we want, but usually it's just the monstrous, greedy people that actually want destruction, devastation, and conquest, which are the exact same type of people as Evolt itself, in that it doesn't actually understand compassion, camaraderie, empathy, which are usually the aspects of a socio and psychopath that make them want to kill, want to take everything from themselves, and it's not reflective of the normal expectations of humanity, because we are people. We can't really function as individuals. We need society as kind of a balancing factor to keep us sane, and without that, like, we're going to go crazy. If you brought down a bunch of borders between people, take out the race factor, take out the nationality factor, take out the religion factor, are usually more than amicable. It's just when you divide people, when you make them think they're better than others, that's usually when stuff gets stupid, and that is the exact situation Evolt is responsible for causing with the whole Skywall incident, which reinforces what Sento keeps saying, in that Evolt is the reason behind all these atrocities, and Sento's right, and Evolt doesn't see that because he all thinks that they would have fought over something else eventually, and I'm like, no, the only reason for this war was because the nation was divided in the first place, and your taint from opening the Pandora's box made people, like, go nuts with their most reckless ambitions without the consideration for those around them, because they stopped being able to understand other people. You isolated them in mentality from being able to connect to others, and thus caused all this conflict. So it's like, he's trying to say that Sento's words are bullshit, but it's in direct contrast against what he actually caused in of himself, that it's like, oh, all generalist statements. It's a continuance of what Gentoku was saying in the proxy fight too, in that it's half an argument, missing the context of what else has gone on all around it. At least that's my rationale for everything that's been happening here. But regardless of that, Pandora's box is opening, so clearly this is the point by which Sento gets his last power-up in Genius form, which, from teaser information, seems to be coming in the next episode. I'm not entirely certain that's what's going to happen, because we still have Kamuro's Evil Phase 3, the Rabbit form, to actually have show up. So either he has to possess Sento, or he has to possess someone else after he leaves Ryuga's body. Because we're certain as hell that he has to be leaving Ryuga's body after this confrontation. We just don't know where it's just unknown who he's going to go into next. Or if he's going to possess, what's his name? The Glasses guy, to actually allow him to become Mad Rogue in the next part of the arc. We're not sure about that yet. But regardless, yeah, this is a pretty extreme way to go to the final form for the series, because, well, we've never had a Kamen Rider assume their final form at the beginning of an apocalypse. Usually they get it before the apocalypse shows up, and they have to use that form to prevent the apocalypse. They're still preventing the apocalypse with it in this show, just you don't expect it to be part of the actual apocalypse yet. Actually, it's not that many series who even go to the apocalypse extreme, but you get what I'm going with. It's builds usually following its own standard of quality, and the Romance of the Three Kingdoms narrative it's been producing. So, yeah, I'm still completely content with how this show is going. Its pacing leaves much to be desired, but, there are worse things out there. So, yeah, that's all I got, and I will see you next week.